the way that I like to start these conversations is generally to ask how you ended up in the cannabis industry and what your background was before, and how and when you got into the space. I'm gonna
So,
close the door.
first of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
The short answer is I've been doing data and analytics. I really most of my career. I was in the CPG industry for a long time. The way I always describe what I do is, I'm in the business of helping people make more money, through making better data-driven decisions, right? So if having data is one thing, but being able to deploy it into a manner and a process with tools, so it drives more money for your business. That's really what I'm passionate about. So getting into the space, I was with a little company called Nielsen for better part of 20 years, and I ran their business out in Australia and New Zealand, and came back and did some global work
Mhm.
here in the based out of the U.S., which is what brought me to Chicago, was where Nielsen's headquartered. And I left the company coming up to 10 years ago now, to start my own firm with the goal of really helping emerging brands and channels build out their CPG toolkits. There's a company called Big Chalk Analytics that I co-founded with a couple other guys from Nielsen. And then, and what we found being based in Chicago is one of the biggest emerging channels and brands that were happening in our backyard was cannabis. And so as about 10 years ago, the industry really started pulling in talent from more traditional industries. And so I had a couple of my former clients when I was at Nielsen, wind up at some large MSOs, and we're like, Kris, you got to come help us, man. Like this is the that we've got all this growth happening, but I have no idea if I'm even making money. I don't, none of the tools that I'm used to exist in this space, and I won't share all the details. But I remember walking up to my first meeting in with a large MSO that was ultimately acquired. All their stuff still in business here. But I had all these visions. I was like, yeah, we're gonna help you with your segmentation, and we're gonna do some marketing mix, and we're gonna do all this pricing elasticities. And the CEO at the time was like, no, Kris, you don't understand. Like I just need to know how much product we're selling and how much money we're making, because we've grown through acquisition, and it's in 9 different POS systems and 9 different templates, and I'm paying people just to analyze Excel sheets, and it's just a mess. And so we realized that, oh, this is a different world than we're used to. And so we spent the next 12 months integrating data, cleansing data, getting real familiar with some of the challenges that a growing brands and growing dispensary groups in this space we're having. And it's been a good ride. I've been in the space now almost exclusively almost about 10 years. And then I guess fast forward, after a few years of doing that more on the professional services side, we ultimately decided to kind of double down, and I merged our cannabis practice with my co-founder Wes Shepard, who's our CEO. Wes had built an amazing technology platform that is great at taking ugly, unstructured data and organizing it and cleaning it and normalizing it so it can be used in different applications and BI platforms. And so when COVID hit and overnight, basically the entire inventory of the cannabis industry had to go online to survive, we realized that we could really do something special in the industry. And so we merged our companies, launched Hoodie Analytics, and I think we're 6 years in now, and we're thrilled that I think we're with 16 of the top 20 brands in the country, and we're plus we've been humbled to with all of the growth and the I guess just the feedback that we've been getting from our clients to say, thank God you're here. You've been made such a difference to our business. And that's been really motivating for, for us and the team just to ensure that we're keeping things going. So that's a long answer to your question, Jake. So apologize.
Yeah, well, it usually is.
Yeah.
So, and it's similar to, a lot of people that I talk to in the industry. I'm super excited to talk today. Analytics is, I spend most of my time
Yep.
working inside of our analytics, and we see the marketing side of things, right? So we're running ads and we're measuring what's going on. And we do tie into the POS and the ecom platform, and we
Yep.
can look at things today over the last year. We've rolled out things like incrementality, churn analysis, customer velocity, all of those types of things. But we generally are looking at it through the lens of marketing and more specifically online orders.
Yep.
And so you've got a richer data set that looks at more angles. So I think the first question I have is something you said, you work with brands and retailers, I assume.
We do.
And I'll just caveat, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. Feel free to not answer them if they are trade secrets or you don't want to answer them. I will
Right.
not be offended.
Yep.
Um, what is the makeup of brands versus retailers for you as a business? And I'm asking is like kind of which cohort is more tuned into their analytics?
Um, I mean the makeup, it's it depends on how you slice it, right? We work with most of the MSOs, which obviously are kind of cover both sides. And
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
I, and the reality of it is for, MSOs are in so many, there's so many people like employees that they have and different
Yeah.
stakeholders, and they're selling in case many brands, right? And so just to function, they have to have a pretty dialed in technology ecosystem. And and I think I've been um more as obviously the deeper and the longer that I'm in this industry, you kind of start realizing that there's like a bit of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but within the data analytics space, right? And
Mhm.
and you're seeing it happen now. I mean, like I told you, my our kind of origin story in cannabis was just like, hey man, I just need to know what I'm selling and how much money I'm making. That's like
Yeah.
that's like hierarchy number one. Over the past 2 years, there's been a huge focus on ordering products and how do I order the right products and how do I ensure that I don't spend too much on inventory, that I don't have cash to, like, and that's been the current fly. I think I ran into 5 new companies last at NECANN that were showing me their cool new apps that do something very similar to that, and so that's like the hot topic over the past couple of
Mhm.
years. But if you fast forward to what the CPG types of organizations are doing, like that's just table stakes, right? And where they're differentiating themselves as you start getting into your trade and promotion strategy and your marketing mix efforts and how you're doing analyzing every dollar that I'm spending across my marketing programs. And there's a whole bunch of work on consumer behavior that just doesn't exist in this industry today. And so I would say that the larger national brands and the MSOs are probably pushing the envelope more than others. But in saying that, man, there's some amazing dispensaries that are really being data forward, and they're bringing principles of operating in from more traditional industries, and so there are some best in class examples across the board.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. The It's a pretty dynamic market in terms of like the spectrum of operators. And yeah, we work with some companies that, yeah, have one or two stores, but really have their act together, pushing
Oh
a lot
yeah,
of volume, running everything pretty
yeah,
well. And then we work with large MSOs, and those are their own beasts because some of them are centrally organized and some of them are very not centrally organized in between the different
yep.
states. Um,
And some of them change back and forth every 6 months, so
That's true. Or they get bought, or they sell pieces, or they MSA stuff. So
yeah.
yeah, it's very dynamic. Okay, so in terms of like, what's your macro view of the industry today? And you can slice that up a little bit into regions because we've got like the mature markets, California, Colorado, Washington, Oregon. You've got New York, which is out of its infancy, but still early stages in
Yep.
New Jersey. And actually, on that point, how do you look at the market in like how many slices? Because there's a couple ways to look at it. You can look at limited license states, non-limited license. You can look at how long has it been legal. Is it medical only? Do you have like for each state, like kind of a categorization for where it's at in its arc?
So I mean, we do. So I mean, we look at we do look at maturity curves of the different markets. I mean, the main reason for that is in forecasting what the potential the future looks like for a given market. The Hoodie platform and the data and tools we have is applicable no matter what stage you're in, right? Because we're telling you what's your market share look like? What should you be buying more of? Which dispensaries should you sell your stuff to? Where are you underperforming where there's opportunities? What's your price? Like all that's all that is the same across every market you're in, right? Now you may have less variables and less opportunities, but the decisions and the efforts, are pretty consistent. But to your point on the classifying the markets, there obviously is a maturity curve that exists, and I did a fun little simple analysis about a year ago, and that got quite a bit of traction, where we looked at basically just the sales per capita across all of the states, and with the idea being if every market had everyone in the market had consistent access to the product. They had fair pricing,
Hmm.
and the operators in the market were able to make some money. What would that look like, right? So it's taking a little bit less of like a maturity curve of like an Oregon and Washington been around the longest, but arguably they're not the most mature markets because they're struggling with a lot of with operators making money. The price points are super cheap, and so there's
Yeah,
arguably they're not the strongest market, and that's a market like California, candidly, has been around a long time, but the illicit market there is rampant, right? And so
yeah,
why is that? It's because of access. It's because of price. It's because of regulations, right? And these things. So what we started looking at is like if we were to take some of the markets that are highest on the sales per capita, and the ones we were kind of pegging were like a Massachusetts, a Michigan, even a Missouri, markets that are younger, but they're doing pretty well on the dollars per capita side. Michigan's a bit of an exception because it's well over, what I think what a normal mature market would look like. But we basically came up with a $800 per capita it's per household, was effectively the number that was where Missouri was at, Michigan was at, Massachusetts was right around there. Like Michigan, like I said, Michigan was like at $1,000 or something like that, but it's like $800 per capita. And then you can then say, hey, if we think that is what possible looks like, and those markets, there's plenty of dispensaries, everyone can get to one, the prices are reasonably fair, people are making money, that $800 per capita is the magic number. Then we were able to use that to say, okay, so where is their unmet growth? And obviously markets like Texas are huge because it hasn't even started. But you find that like New York is huge, right? There's a lot of potential in New York. Candidly, California should be twice as big as it is right now. Because they are missing out on some of those other components. But that was one way that we were kind of pegging what the maturity curve looks like, was like saying let's identify some leading markets and say if everyone else was able to reach that level, what does the impact for the industry? And if you take that logic on, you're talking about 30 to 40 billion dollars in in untapped sales right now that the US could have if we get our act together. And that's not those are not small dollars
And that's per capita, meaning just the state population divided
per
by
household. Yeah. So
sales.
like looking at the total number of households in
Household.
Missouri, total cannabis sales in Missouri divided by total number of households in Missouri. And so average households like whatever, 2.1 people, something like that, 2.5 people.
Do you, speaking of well, we've obviously the illicit market is a huge problem in California and has been a problem in New York as well, although it's maybe slightly better now. Um, what about the hemp market? Because hemp market, and I bring that up because you mentioned Texas, right?
Yep.
And Texas, I know is buying a lot of, you know, non-Delta 9 products um, via, e-commerce
Yep.
platform. And so do you, I imagine that data would be hard to come by though.
So I mean we are tracking some hemp data. And we actually were, we're doing some things with it's early stages, but like we're pretty tight with the guys from NIQ or Nielsen, who have launched their own, representation of it. But there are gaps in ours, there are gaps in theirs. You pull them together and you
Yeah.
start a more complete picture of what's happening. But it's not, it's not small. And so, and to your point, like I think that 30 to 40 billion dollars of demand that I mentioned, I mean, a lot of that was starting to get consumed with some of the hemp. I mean, so the dollars are there, they're real.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Hoodie Analytics and specifically, let's say, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, broadly speaking, but you know, there's the understanding what's selling in the market, then there's the understanding what I should be ordering, and you must have had this conversation with Cannabis operator where they come in and they say, "Well, I can tell what's moving off of my shelf, and I order more of that." What is it that what additional insights do I get that Hoodie's going to help me with?
So the one it's one of the most used features of our platform. So we're, what an operator can obviously look at very quickly is to say, hey, how is the product performing in my store? Like if I buy the product and I stick it on my shelf, I could see, is it moving 1 unit a day? Is it moving 100 units a day? Right. And they can start making benchmarks to say, I probably shouldn't order more of this because it's below the threshold that I've set for myself. What what Hoodie provides you the ability to do is to start understanding, there are thousands of potential products that an operator may consider putting on their shelf, right?
Yeah.
And and so, in the old days, you would have, some of the bigger players come in to say, hey, I'm the top pre-roll brand in Missouri. You don't have me on your shelf. You should stock. And that, while that's nice, it feels good. Oh, I should probably have the biggest guy in town. Because they're the biggest doesn't mean that they're going to make the most sense for your dispensary. That biggest brand may not have the highest velocity. It may just be the biggest brand because it's in the more stores and they have the most salespeople. It doesn't mean that when
Mhm.
I put it on my shelf, it's going to make me money, right? And so what Hoodie has done really since our start is to try to tease out the drivers of sales across, sales is three things. It's distribution times price times velocity equals sales, right? And so we allow the users to tease out, like, is my brand growing because I just have really good salespeople, or is my brand number one because when I put it on the shelf, consumers want it and it flies off the shelf and it's priced right and all that kind of good stuff. And so that's really one of the biggest opportunities that we give to operators is to say, hey, how much money am I going to make for this product when I put it on my shelf without having to spend thousands of dollars buying your first initial order because we're going to tell you based off of dispensaries just like yours, this is how this product's going to perform. And so if it's going to make you $10,000 for every $1 million you sell at dispensaries just like yours, the assumption is it should make you $10,000 as well. And if you've got similar products that are only making you $5,000, then you should probably look to replace the $5,000 item with the one that's going to make you $10,000. And then you rinse and repeat, right? And and that's where there's assortment architecture and category management principles and things like that. To say you can't just have a store that only has infused pre-rolls and that's all you sell. It's not
Yeah.
going to be successful because you're going to have someone comes in and maybe they don't want the infused, they want the regular pre-roll, or they want a fruit forward variant, right? And so you've got to figure out what are all of those consumer needs that people are seeking out. And
Mhm.
then I start building in my frameworks and making the evaluation within those predefined segments that I can create. And Hoodie does a great job of helping operators kind of manage through that whole process.
That's great. So you've been doing this for a while, and you must have a mountain of behavioral data. Um, do you does your system at this point like offer up suggestions? As if I'm in there, I'm a retailer, I'm looking at my analytics.
Okay.
Because I know, we started doing this late last year, putting agents on top of the data set and looking at what's happening and then making suggestions. In our case, it's like you should serve more ads in this zip code, you should use this creative more, you should look at this
Yep.
publisher. Talk to me about that because that's the fun stuff right now.
It is, man. I mean, we're like everybody. I mean, we're doing loads with AI. We have a whole army of agents working for us. I don't think we've done it. We've been fun enough to name them all fun names like Bobby and Tommy and all this kind of stuff that's everyone's doing. But we've got an army of agents working for us. Of everyone from helping us prioritize workflows to managing security to helping us provide faster analytics. And then what we've started doing more of is serving up, the ability for very custom agents for specific use cases. And we've got a buyer's agent and we've got a seller's agent, right? And the buyer's agent is exactly what you just talked through was, these are, based off of my defined hierarchy within my segments. What should I do? What should I stop? What should I buy less of? What should I buy? And what should I buy instead? And so right now the agents are serving up those recommendations. And again, hand on heart, this is beta. Everybody, I apologize for some Hoodie users that might be watching this. Be like, I don't have that yet. So we have some MVP clients out there that are partnering with us on these things, both in the buyer agent and the seller agent side, that are doing just that. And I think the nice thing is because Hoodie at our core, we're a data company, and so most of our time and energy is spent in ensuring that we've got the cleanest attribution, the best data. And so, candidly, Claude and the other LLMs, it loves our data because it's so clean and rich, and so it's easy for it to make very quick decisions from. And the buyer and seller agents are tip of the iceberg of where we're going with that.
Yeah, it is good you're doing testing. It's one of the things that I think people get tripped up with using agents is that generally the agents are very confident when they deliver
Oh yeah.
results. And so you really have to put some rails on them and do a lot of evals because they will give you a wrong answer just as confidently as a correct answer, right?
Oh, completely.
And people get thrown off
And
by
then you're
that.
like, oh, that's wrong. That's wrong, Tommy. And Tommy, my agent. And Tommy will be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I
I'm
missed
so
that thing. That's a good point, Chris. Thanks for
You're
telling me.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Lots of that. You're absolutely
A
right.
1,000%, man. And again, I think that's where, we really, and even with my own team, I mean, we have all of our data access on an MCP server, and so my team can go through and create analysis, create dashboards, and create slides
Yeah.
in instance, right? But we know that, I mean, unfortunately, there's still hallucinations that happen, and there's still, if if you don't get the context right and the structure right, there unfortunately can be just wrong information that gets served up, which is not acceptable if we're giving that to a client to say this is what you should do. And so we really have a combination of we need to have the agents that can support our teams be more efficient and effective and spending more, but there is a path where they have to be double checking that information and ensuring that they're spot checking stuff so when it's going out the door they know it's correct.
Yeah. Let's get back into some, well, actually, I'm gonna ask you what you think the most interesting sort of data insights that because you can see longitudinally across a lot of things. Like, what have you seen over the last, let's keep it recent, like 30 days in terms of trends that kind of jumped out yet? When you're analyzing large data sets, there's always things that pop up that you weren't necessarily
Yeah.
expecting. And then, there's been some things where I look at them like, oh, that's got to be wrong. But then you really, go and vet the data, it turns out to be right. What have you seen recently that has caught your eye, if anything,
Yeah.
in terms of trend?
So Jake, while I would love to say I spent all my day just looking at the new trends and stuff coming out, it's probably not a correct statement because I'm, but a couple of things just that I don't know that it's overly surprising, but that we are still seeing quite a bit is uh, you know terps and the importance of terps is becoming, a way bigger thing now. And you're starting to see that come through with like even labels on packaging where people are actively calling out, percentage of terps and so we're starting to see that happen. One of the more interesting things that I have seen recently is, it's been happening for a while, so this is probably an old story by now, but there are some stores that try have actively tried to move away from the traditional dispensary experience where you kind of come in and there's a counter and an iPad and try to make it more of a traditional store where you can go in and pick up a shopping cart and a basket and actually shop the store. And I what I find fascinating about that experience is the products that are selling in those stores are completely different than what people are typically buying online, with the kind of regular e-commerce experience that most of the dispensaries have. So products that you would have
What's an
probably
example of that? Like some differences of behavior you see where like m
I mean,
more,
beverages are probably the best example of
okay.
that. Like, beverages do not sell very well in e-commerce online experiences, but in the store, if you put the beverages out, people can pick them up. They fly, absolutely fly, and because it's the traditional e-commerce experience, and you see this probably more than me, but like in many ways, in the cannabis industry, has been set up to focus on discounting.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Here are my specials. Come and get them. Here's all these things are half off. And guess what people do? You put in their face and they say, "Oh, well, that's great. Thank you for that amazing discount. Let me buy that."
Yeah.
If I'm walking into a store and I'm shopping the store, guess what? I'm not focused on what's 50% off. That one store I just talked about, they don't even show the promotions in the store, which I find a little bit crazy, but they don't even show them. Like so you're walking in the store, you're just shopping based off of what products, are relatable to you that meet the need that you're trying to solve for right now. And then, if you ask the bud tender, like, "Hey, what's on sale?" They'll tell you, but you're shopping the store like for the first time. And I think it is and I mean, no disrespect to the early guys in the space, but I think these e-commerce platforms have done the industry a disservice by focusing so much energy on what is cheap today, what promotions are here today, because that's not the way most traditional CPG industries are successful. And I think we have the opportunity to be way more focused on brands and consumer segments and need states and things along those lines that are going to be able to command a price premium, but also don't just focus people on the cheapest shit that because candidly, as that happens, we're just going to have more Michigans, or we're going to have more Oregons where where that it's hard to compete and exist in those markets because the prices are not sustainable. And
Yeah.
so anyway, but that they call it this bodega style store where you're shopping. Like I found that absolutely fascinating.
Well, if you look back, eh, there's some sort of intuitive roots if you think about it, right? You have, especially in an early market where there's not a dedicated marketing person, there's not a dedicated analytics person, or if there are, it's largely going to be retail or street team stuff.
Yep.
Um, if you have a lever you can pull and it works, which is discounts, that's what people get used to doing, right? As when you're running an operation. The
It
other
work,
lever that got
but hang on, but you got to define there, man. It when you say it works, that's the problem. Because I would argue that actually in generally is not working. What it works for is driving short term
correct.
short term revenue growth, right? Like immediate short term revenue growth. That's where it works, right? So
Right, on a very short time horizon, right? This is
yes,
one of the things
yep,
that, from a marketing perspective, still most people are highly focused on new customers only,
yep,
starting to think about retention. The concept of brand equity isn't even on anyone's radar
oh,
because that's a long-term investment, and these businesses have had such a hard time staying in business.
yeah,
It's
completely,
difficult. They're worried about like payroll, right? They're not worried
yeah,
about the brand equity
100%.
next year.
That's and that's
So
hierarchy of needs thing, man. I agreed.
right. So the same thing with text messages. That's another button you can push. So those are kind of the two things that are available without having access to data, access to proper
Yep,
marketing strategies. You can push the send everyone a text blast and sales happen. People buy stuff. You can
yep,
discount things and people buy stuff. But the whole industry has been locked in that kind of death spiral for a long time.
yep,
I'm very interested to see that someone has just decided to not put promos in their retail store at all. That's a bold move. I like that.
yeah.
Because everyone's strict. Because the problem is it's you and you have your, five other dispensaries that you're competing against in your neighborhood. If you stop discounting, you lose customers. However, I would also argue that those aren't the best customers to keep long term
Completely,
anyway.
completely. I did a study for I did a study for an MSO. It's probably been a year ago now, but we did a segmentation of all their customers, and they had two large segments, right? And I think they had one of the large segments. I'm going to screw up a lot of these numbers, but it was something like 23% of their customers made up 60% of their profits. 60%
Yeah.
of the profits, right? And what were these people buying? They were loyal customers. They weren't always buying on deal. They were buying premium brands. They were willing to try new stuff, right? And they were like, but they were generally willing. They weren't price shopping, right? And then there was another segment of customers that made up the same amount of sales in that store, but it was like 20% of profits. It was crazy. Like, and all to your point, all they were doing, they were coming in for the deal and then they're gone. And next week they're going to the guy across the street who had the better deal. And it's like I don't know. Like, sure, I get it. Like, it's 22% of your sales coming from those people. But
Mhm.
I would argue that 90% of your marketing efforts is also focused on those people, and that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that when you press the button that are going to come in. So, so thank you so much for rewarding me. Whereas the guys that are driving 60% of my profit, like they don't get the same love. They certainly don't get the same amount of focus from most marketing spend.
Yeah. And is that something that your platform, because that is important. A lot of people get hung up on gross revenue, right? Well, let's
Yep,
talk about gross margin rather than gross revenue.
100%.
Is I'm assuming that's something that's core to your analytics?
Oh yeah. We obviously want to be you. You've got to look at both, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important for us that you're bringing in, looking at your margin contribution as well as your revenue side. It's the point for operators. I mean, it's one of the more exciting things we're doing right now is trying to provide these operator toolkits where you could literally set benchmarks for your revenue, your budget, your margin contribution, your days of supply, like what all those would be. And then the platform says, hey guys, it looks like you're missing your target in, premium indica flower by $200,000. And, and oh, and by the way, it's this specific brand that is the primary contributor for you missing that target. So if you want to fix it, you need to get them on the phone and have a conversation. Right. And
Yeah.
so that's a big thing that we're trying to do right now is to facilitate the ability for a brand and a retailer to collaborate around shared KPIs and a common view of what it's going to take to win in this category for my retailer partner.
Yeah. All right. So you've got a background in CPG, so you've seen how the uh, the rest of the world operates. I talked to. It's been slow going. We've done a little bit over the years. We're doing a fair amount now, which is actually running co-marketing campaigns, right? Traditionally, most of the marketing dollars on the digital side have been coming from the retailer because really they're the only ones that can do a ROAS analysis of like ad spend to basket size,
Yep.
whereas an individual brand can't sell to a consumer. So those analytics get kind of muddied. And it's starting to happen now, which is like, oh, the brand and the retailer should do co-marketing budgets together, drive people to the store. And because in like supermarkets, the promotions and the end caps, that's all driven by the brands.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been the inverse for a long time in the cannabis space. How long do you think it's going to take for that to flip over and kind of as you've been in it, how have you seen that evolve?
I mean, it's definitely starting to happen now. Like, and it's 100% starting now. And I think the retailers need to be willing to be a bit more transparent about their metrics and what they're trying
Mhm.
to achieve, and to welcome some of their trusted brand partners in to make that a reality. I also, the other challenge with it is just the tools and the connectivity of the data just to validate the ROI and that stuff. It's tough right now. I mean, there's no like in the CPG industry, like there's this concept of TPM, trade promotion management, or TPO, trade promotion optimization. Like those words generally, if I say them to anybody in this industry, they have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, because but they know that, like, oh yeah, I'll sponsor this promotion, or I'll sponsor this, special co-marketing program, and we're going to agree to some loose terms, but then just tracking that through agreement to actual execution to the reconciliation with the accounts payable, like that tends to be like done over text and weird emails, and it's just like there's nothing to facilitate that. And so I do think it will get easier to do as some more tools and things get developed that just enable it.
Yeah.
I also think that, I think we're starting to get to a point where brands have enough data that that they can make a case to a retailer to say, guys, I'm going to bring new customers to your door. Like, this is what I'm going to do for you. It's not just the sale you're getting from me, but it's the fact that I am bringing you a new customer that you have the opportunity to create an experience with, and the lifetime value of that customer is not just the $40 to spending on my eighth. It's the $1,500 that they're going to get, that you're going to get over the next year when they keep coming back to you again and again because you've given them an amazing experience. And I gave you the trial to bring that customer in. And I think having the ability to start collaborating on that is going to make a world of difference. But I,
Yeah.
I I am seeing it. Like, one of the larger MSOs had like a premier partner conference like back in February, and they invited like their top 10 vendors in, and they're like, hey, here's the deal. I'm going to give you guys this opportunity, but you have to deliver, right? And this is what I'm going to expect from you. So they're basically giving their top 10 partners the keys to the kingdom, but they're putting the expectation in those partners' hands to say, you need to support me, you need to help me grow these categories, but I'm going to give you every opportunity. And I know already some of them are going to thrive in that environment because it's kind of CPG 101. Others never done this before and they're going to struggle. And, but I think it's that learning curve. It's going to help everyone get smarter.
Yeah. We've got, I mean, it's taken a long time. We've done over the years, we've done them kind of here and there. We've got pretty good traction in California at this point with co-marketing campaigns.
Yep. Nice.
Because we've got enough coverage between brands and retailers where we can measure it all the way through. And, and there's really two parts for brands. One is increasing sell-through.
Yep.
But the larger opportunity that I tell them is really it's a sell-in opportunity. That's how you would normally do this. And if you have a product you want someone to put it on their shelf, you would come into the market and say, I want to put this on your shelf and I'm going to support it with X dollars of marketing, right? So
Yep.
you should give me better positioning or carry more of my SKUs or carry my product at all in the first
Yep.
place. And we can measure it all the way through at this point. What's interesting is cannabis specifically is it's going to be more similar to grocery in the sense that you can advertise, let's say you're running advertise for like infused pre-rolls, as you mentioned. There's a very high likelihood that that customer that the brand captured and sent to the dispensary is also going to buy products from someone else, right? Because that's what happens when you have a bunch of different SKUs and different categories, people do that. That's been a little bit of a struggle, I think, for people to wrap their head around, which is that I'm spending dollars and someone else is getting the benefit of some of that potentially. I don't know how in the let's say the grocery store world, I think everyone understands that you're going to advertise milk. People are also going to go buy cereal when they go there. Um, but
It's a multi-touch attribution models, man.
it's a multi-touch attribution model. Yeah, exactly. Um, and the market has been getting more sophisticated, but you know, when you onboard someone who hasn't had experience with a deep analytics platform, do you have like the here's the getting started version. Here's kind of like the high level, big picture stuff before you get them too deep in the weeds. How do you see like adoption happening when you bring someone in who's never really used it before?
I mean, it's fair to say that I mean it's a challenge. Like you can imagine if we bring on a new MSO and they've got 100 users, the chances are 90 of them are very they're 90 of them are not looking for the hardcore analytics solution. They just need to
Right.
know when I wake up in the morning, what should I do today? Who should I call? Where do I have a problem? Like, it's fair to say our bias has probably skewed a little bit more towards helping the light users be ragingly successful, with our applications, because that's again, that's we want it. The whole brand of Hoodie is we wanted data to feel just as comfortable as wearing your favorite regular hoodie, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the idea. Like it's part of your everyday use, and so that's been where our bias has largely been, is to helping that group. So the the flip side of that is, some of your more sophisticated users who need to get the hardcore analytics, like we we tend to do that more on a consultative way, and where I the folks, if anyone's worked with Hoodie, most of the folks that we hired, they've come from operators, they've come from brands, like they've used data to make decisions, and so they're really
Hmm.
good at holding your hand and showing you some tips and tricks or best practices. And and again, it's why I came from Nielsen. Like I helped write or author like the Nielsen client engagement model, and the general principle for that is, if you are helping your client get amazing ROI out of the data investment that they're doing, they're going to come back and they're going to get more from you, and they're going to want to partner with you and grow together. And so we
Hmm.
we have that principle at Hoodie too. And so where you get more into one of the more complicated opportunities, or the more analytically oriented, we're pretty good at putting the right people in the room to help drive them and to make those decisions. But it tends to be a little bit more bespoke than 90% of our plug and play, like get your sales guys running and here's how to rapidly operationalize the data, which we're really good at. But you know there's so much nuance in the more complicated stuff that you're dealing a lot with, Jake, that it takes a little bit more hand holding and guiding. And we're throwing this conference I invited you to in a couple weeks, and that the whole principle of that is getting smart people in a room to collaborate, learn from each other, share best practices, and to get it at some of those more creative analytical approaches to data.
Yeah. It's a fun challenge though, slicing the data up into, what we like to call like actionable insights, right? Because that's the other thing is
100%.
it's like if you give someone 50 pie charts, like what is that? How is that actually really helpful?
Yep.
Um, and so, bubbling that up into taking what could be pretty deep analytics and turning that into natural language that's say,
Yep.
relatively simple things like these zip codes are performing well for you, right? You
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
invest more time and energy here. These ones are not. And we've seen, pretty big shifts. Like that example, like zip codes, for example, actually just doing an analysis
Yep.
for a delivery service of you service 100 zip codes, right?
Yep.
Well, which ones are performing well for you based on the population and demographics, right? And how are you, addressing that market versus other? And that I've seen that make like a 30% difference month over month, just like doing that one shift in terms of like
That's awesome.
marketing performance improvement.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's the other fun thing about it is there's so much sort of greenfield to explore in the space.
Yeah.
Um, you really can make big differences in people's operations. And that was my next question for you is if you have some favorite anecdotes of companies you've worked with where they were kind of flying blind before you came in, you showed them some things and it really made an impact on their business.
Yeah. I mean, there's lot. I mean, there's lots, man. I mean, to your point, I mean, it is why I'm still in this industry. It's why I think my whole team is still in this industry because we have the ability to really make a difference in these companies' success. And I really feel strongly that that's why we've got the client base and the raging evangelists that we have is because we're teaching them to grow. We're teaching them to be more nimble. We're teaching them to be more successful. And so, uh, we've been fortunate to have lots of examples of where we've done that. We had a smaller operator. I think they have two dispensaries, and they just, they have a brand that they just launched I think this is in the Missouri market. But they're new to the space, like, and so they're smart people, like really smart people. But like they just haven't had the infrastructure. Like, I mean, you imagine you're two team like a two-store operator, and you just launched a brand. You don't have a huge team. I don't have a dedicated analyst. They don't have all these people, right?
Yeah.
But we showed them like a couple of just simple stories, right? Where we said, hey, you got to talk in terms of ROI for your partners, right? Like, look at how my brand is performing over here. If you put me on instead of this underperforming brand, it's going to make you this much more money. And by the way, you can imagine what you could do with that. You could hire another salesperson. You could put that into a marketing campaign with Jake, right? Like all these
Yeah.
things you can start doing with that extra cash that you have, that I'm going to make you. And I mean, these guys literally their first call, your first sales call using Hoodie, like the team was blown away, and they paid for their whole subscription with us in one call of the very first time. Like
Wow. It's
and
great.
their CEO calls me up and he was like, Kris, you would not believe what just happened, blah blah blah. And like I mean, we're tickled to death, man, because it's like we tell those stories all the time, but like it's these guys were thrilled because now, I mean, and now the best thing is they saw it work, right? They saw it work. They know that they can make a difference and that it's going to be impactful. And now it's just rinse and repeat. And they've got it down. And again, these are small players. We've
Yeah.
had many other companies that are like, they'll roll us out in a state or two, and you'll find someone that realizes pretty quickly, hey, if I embrace the process and how I start leveraging data in a more systemic way, Look at the results that I could get. And, these guys were getting 30% lifts by after implementing Hoodie. And,
Yeah.
and so it becomes pretty easy for them to then justify, oh, I probably should move that into my next state and then my next state and my next state. And that's, I mean, those, again, I know I'm not being super specific with you, but
That's okay.
yeah, but those are, but there's lots of those kind of anecdotal, wins. Where I'm where we're really focused right now is on, like, there's a lot. When we started, we really, most of our initial solutions were focused on brands and and the sales team and sales management and and executives. But more recently, the past 12 months has been almost laser focused on the operator side. And so that's been really where we've been trying to double down. And because the metrics aren't the same. Like, a lot of what you're trying to do for these guys is just help them preserve cash, right? And move from having 45 days of inventory to only 20 days of inventory. Because that could be millions of dollars that I can now
Yeah.
redeploy to something of value, that was previously tied up in just inventory sitting on the shelf that wasn't moving.
Yeah.
And, like, so it's a different way, but that's an area that we've been really focused on.
That's great. All right. We're running up on time. I actually have a hard stop at 12:30, which is my time.
Okay, man.
We pushed the meeting a little bit and then we ended up starting late, so we didn't get as much time as I would like. I would like to schedule a part two to this conversation if you're amenable to that.
Yeah, happy to,
So I
man.
want to get into some more details. And then I also I'll see about coming out to Chicago as well.
Come
Uh,
out and see us, dude. The one plug.
yeah,
Sessions
plug away.
360. Yeah, Sessions 360. It's so we have, in partnership with Ignited, we have a third day of Ignited, that's all around data analytics and technology. It's called Sessions 360, and it's going to be super fun. If anyone's listening and wants a discount code or special codes, just text me or whatever. Email me after this
Yeah, how
moment.
can people get a hold? Courtney will send something out, but like just for people
Yeah.
listening, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I mean, Chris at hoodieanalytics.com is the email. It's the easiest way. But honestly, if you hit any of our website, whatever, there's and you go through the
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 forums.
reach out channels, they can get you to me too if you can't find me. But if anyone's in town in Chicago on June 17th, that's the day. We've got some amazing speakers. We're doing super fun workshops. Afternoon, we'll be separating operators from brands, and you get to talk, everyone gets to talk about each other. And there's fun things like, the 10 things, the 10, retailers will come in and talk about the 10 biggest pet peeves they have of sales reps. And then the sales reps do the same about the retailers and the buyers. And it's a really fun day. And then the night before, we've got a kick-ass welcome party on a rooftop deck with a live band. So if you join us for the day, make sure you come in early and hit the welcome party with us.
You should do an actual tug of war with a big
It's
rope with the brands and the,
um,
the
it's funny.
retailers.
We're doing a version of this Monday at Ignited as well, on the VIP stage, but we did it last year for the first time. It went off really well. But you're exactly right, man. It's like it's a
Yeah,
virtual tug of war. So
there you go. Great. Well, thanks for the time, Chris. This has been another episode of Cannabis Marketing Live. People know how to get a hold of you. We will schedule a part two of this for sure because there's a lot to get into.
yeah, love you, man. Thanks for your time,
All
Jay.
right.
All right,
Thanks,
see you, man.
everyone. Bye,
Bye.
Chris.